I inherited a storage unit and opened the wrong box. What I found forced me to choose between a stranger and my family. When my Uncle Tommy died, he left me exactly two things in his will: a cracked Polaroid of him holding a fish the size of a bulldog and a key on a faded orange lanyard with lockbox storage C112 sharpied on it. My mother rolled her eyes because Uncle Tommy was the sort of relative who liked to trade a paycheck for a story, who missed birthdays but showed up on random Tuesdays with peach pie and a pocket knife for a 12-year-old, who made you feel like life was a dare. I kept the key in the console of my Honda for 3 weeks, telling myself I would go when I had time, until one Sunday the fridge sounded like a lawnmower and the landlord texted that rent would go up in June, and suddenly a storage unit full of Uncle Tommy's old junk felt like a lottery ticket. Lockbox storage sat behind a strip mall where a nail salon always smelled like Apple Jolly Ranchers, and there was a Cash for Gold place that turned on its neon sign even in daylight. The manager was a woman named Marcy who wore a denim jacket with tiny enamel pins, an avocado, a bowling ball, a bee. She printed a pass, slid a clipboard at me to sign, and nodded toward a line of corrugated metal doors. See rows to the left. If you find anything biological, she said, with the flat tone of someone who had seen a lot of biological, don't touch it. C112 had a padlock the size of a potato. The key stuck for a second, then gave, and the door rattled up to a smell of dust and something sweet and stale, like paper that had hosted too many summers. The unit was packed with the chaos of someone who never lived in one place: stackable plastic bins labeled in sharp caps, tools, kitchen, ties, a milk crate of LPs, a surfboard with a chunk missing from the nose, a cardboard cut out of a young Harrison Ford with a crease right through his eyes. There was also a safe, waist high, with a combination dial and a sticker that said property of anyone, WHO can figure it out, in Tommy's loopy handwriting. I laughed out loud alone, standing there, and the sound echoed in the concrete hall like a second person who also found me funny. I told myself to be methodical. I started with ties, 47 ties, half of them Paisleys that had seen better collars. In tools I found a good hammer with a grip worn smooth. There were 3 coffee mugs, 2 with cracks, 1 with a lipstick stain that wasn't Uncle Tommy's. At the bottom of a bin labeled kitchen I found a manila envelope with my name on it, and inside was a folded page torn from a yellow legal pad. If you're reading this, he'd written, I either kicked it or faked it. Either way, you have to decide I didn't want someone boring to have my stuff. Then, if you know the song On the First Day We Went to the County Fair, you have the code. The problem, I had no idea what he meant. The county fair was a blur of wooden barns and bleating sheep and an old guy hawking corn dogs like medicine. What song? The envelope also had a tiny brass key, too small for the safe, more like mailbox size, and a Polaroid of Uncle Tommy with a blonde woman I didn't recognize, both of them mid-laugh, cotton candy clouds behind them. Thinking better with sugar, I bought a Dr. Pepper from the sputtering vending machine by the office and sat on the lip of the unit messaging my mom. What song did Uncle Tommy play at the fair? I asked. When? She replied. First day he took me. He took you? She wrote. He took that girl from the diner. What are you talking about? The girl from the diner. I stared at the Polaroid and realized the blonde woman was not a stranger, not entirely. She was the woman who used to call me Pumpkin when I was 7 and my mom worked late at the hospital and we went to Ray's Diner for pancakes for dinner. Her name was Gina. I remembered her laugh like a spilled drink and the way she wore her hair in a half ponytail with a red scrunchie even though scrunchies were out. Gina? I texted. Ask Grandma, Mom said, which translated to I do not want to talk about Gina. Inside the safe sticker, if you looked close, the tiny printing under the loopy handwriting read don't overthink it. I pressed my ear to the cool metal and spun the dial just to hear it click. I didn't overthink it. I took the safe's hinge pins out with a hammer. The door didn't fall off dramatically. It shifted a 1/4 inch and caught. There was a cap screw I had not accounted for. I was contemplating asking Marcy for a drill when I noticed the cardboard cutout of Harrison Ford had a sagging edge. Behind it, leaning against the cinderblock wall, was a cheap bachelor pad painting, a sunset that looked like melted sherbet. It was mounted oddly thick for a canvas, like a shallow box. I lifted it and there it was on the back, a little brass lock that fit the little brass key. When it clicked and the panel swung open, I actually said, "Dude," to no one. Inside was not gold nor bearer bonds. It was paper, layered and crisp and furious, letters in envelopes yellowed at the edges, receipts for gas and motel rooms on highways I could trace with my finger, a birth certificate with the mother's name blacked out and the father's line left blank, and a hand-typed page clipped with a paperclip that said, "If this is ever necessary, call the number written on the inside of the LP jacket of blue and tell them the turtle has found the pond. They'll know." I pulled the record crate forward. There was Joni Mitchell's Blue, The 1971 pressing with the deep blue cover that looks like water thinking. Inside, written in pencil in the thin margin by the notes, was a number with a Denver area code and a message, G. The turtle has found the pond. It sounded like the kind of joke you tell when you're scared. I was 31 years old, broke-ish, living in an apartment above a muffler shop, reading a dead man's scavenger hunt. I called anyway. A woman answered so quickly it felt like she'd had the phone in her hand. "Hello?" she said. "Who is this?" The way she said it made me stand up straighter. "My name is Eli," I said. "I think I have something that belongs to you." There was a long pause. "Say it," she said. I swallowed. "The turtle has found the pond." The air changed. She took a breath that sounded like the sigh when a tight knot finally gives. "Where are you?" she asked. I told her the city and she said, "I can be there by tomorrow afternoon. Please. Don't let anyone else see it. Don't let it get taken again." We met at the coffee shop across from Lockbox that roasts their beans so hard the whole block smells like burnt toast. Gina walked in wearing a blue dress with a denim jacket, her hair now gray at the temples, and I recognized her even though I hadn't seen her in 20 years. Her eyes found mine and she tilted her head exactly like she had when I was a kid, a mannerism that unlocked this chain of small memories: napkins folded into boats, a trick with a quarter, a stain of mustard on her sleeve she never scrubbed out. We hugged without thinking about whether we should. "You grew up," she said. "You didn't," I said, which made her smile sadly. When I laid the papers on the table, the barista glanced over like we were doing a drug deal, but it was just the life of a person who had stepped sideways out of the path people expected. Gina ran her finger over the photocopied birth certificate. "This is mine," she said. "I mean, it was supposed to be mine. The thing that proved I existed with the name I picked." She told me this: when she was 19 and pregnant, she left a man who shouted and tried to convince her that his shouts were love. She met Uncle Tommy when he saw her crying in a booth at Ray's and slid her a napkin and said, "I'll trade you something dumb for something true." She gave him the truth. He gave her a handful of dumb things: a plastic compass, a keychain, a pack of grape gum, and a promise that he would help her get a new life like a magician on a budget. He knew a guy who knew a guy in Denver who helped people disappear from bad men. The papers in the painting box were the original and the path: a quiet name change, an apartment lease under an alias for 6 months, a bus ticket bought with cash to a city where she could be someone else. But the bad man found her anyway one night. She ran. The box and the safe and the silly stickers, those were Tommy's way of splitting the risk, making sure if one piece got taken the story didn't end. It was a story about incompetence as a strategy. Nobody checks a melted sherbet painting. "He told me he left a third backup," she said. "Something I could find if I needed it. But I never did. I got away. I married a kind man who likes crossword puzzles and what he calls weekday tacos. He's at the hotel, by the way, because he thinks this is my story to tell. We have a daughter in nursing school who thinks her mother has always been boring." She smiled again, soft and proud. The problem, the thing that folded my stomach like a paper airplane, was that the papers were technically illegal. There were forged signatures. There were dates that didn't line up. There was a receipt with my mother's name in Uncle Tommy's handwriting, for money he borrowed to make it happen, and a note that said, "Pay back when possible." My mother always said Tommy borrowed in directions. He had also, apparently, borrowed from a bad man who kept a ledger of his own. That ledger was stuffed into the back of the Harrison Ford cutout taped with duct tape like a wound. It was written in block letters by someone who liked to make columns. Under T were entries for Tommy. Under E there was one for me, recent, because I had co-signed for him once at a mattress store when his credit was a dare. The ledger had a phone number.